You are Locked On Giants Postcast, part of Locked On Sports San Francisco on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Giants Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR, and today, on the day of MLB trade deadline, the Giants fall to the Oakland Athletics in the first game of the final Bay Bridge series. Final score 5-2. Robbie Ray gave up 3 bombs in his second outing of the season, and the Giants' offense was equally as uninspiring. The Giants' 2 runs tonight came late in this one when the game already fell out of reach, and all of this, of course, comes on the heels of today's trade deadline, in which Farhan and the Giants did a whole lot of nothing as they failed to fully commit to a buy or sell. Lots of lateral moves the Giants fans don't seem too happy about. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's a straight up failure at the trade deadline. I really do. We'll break it all down. But first, I want to thank all of you for watching us on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel. Please hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. Thanks also for listening on the Locked On Giants podcast feed. However you're getting the show, we appreciate it. Make sure to tune in to the Locked On Giants daily show for more in-depth coverage. Ben Kaspick does a great job. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. This one was rough. Robbie Ray got into a lot of 2-strike counts, and Robbie Ray, we know him. He's a fly ball / strikeout pitcher, kind of like Kyle Harrison, loves to go with that high cheddar in the 2-strike counts. And tonight it bit him pretty bad. He gave up 3 bombs. The first one came in the top of the second to a guy named Daz Cameron. Have you ever heard of this guy, Daz Cameron, before? So I sure as hell haven't. This guy's batting 190, and I find myself saying that about 90% of this A's roster. When I'm looking through it, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? It seems like I'm saying that about almost every single guy who comes to the plate for this team. And I went to 2 different A's games last year, and I still don't know who the hell half these guys are. I feel like it's an entirely different lineup from the one I saw just last season at Oakland at the Coliseum, and it's wild, man. To see how this organization has completely free fallen these last few years, it makes me sad just being a Bay Area baseball fan. I mean, I don't hate the A's. I know a lot of Giants fans really hate the A's for some reason. I mean, I'll root for the A's if they're not playing the Giants. I mean, it kind of feels like one of those teams where their success is inconsequential to the success of the Giants. It's weird. Yeah, I don't hate them, but it's fun having 2 pro baseball teams in the Bay Area. I think it's one of the few areas in the world that can really support that. I mean, you look at New York, they got 2 teams. LA's got 2 teams. Chicago's got 2 teams. San Francisco should be able to support 2 teams as well. The San Francisco Bay Area as a whole should absolutely be able to do that. And I don't think it's a lack of support, obviously, as to why this team is leaving. I don't think anybody would say that, at least from the fans. It's absolutely a lack of support from the front office, first and foremost, and the city of Oakland isn't completely getting off scot-free on this one. I mean, the city of Oakland had plenty of opportunities to try and keep the A's here earlier, before it got to the point that it's at now. And it's just really frustrating. It's just really frustrating. But we're not going to spend this whole show talking about that. I just needed to get that out of the way. It really just, I mean, it hurts me that the A's are leaving. Like, I love the competitive nature of having 2 big league teams in the Bay Area. It makes baseball better. It creates more baseball fans in the Bay Area. And losing a professional baseball team in any market does not help that market generate baseball fans and passion for the sport. So I think this is a bad move for baseball in the Bay Area. And it sucks, man. It just sucks that this is the last time we get to see the battle of the Bay between these 2 storied franchises who've met in a World Series before. They played like 160 some odd times during the Battle of the Bay. It's a bummer that this is how this one will end, very anticlimactically, as both these teams are just terrible right now. I mean, the Giants are sputtering in a bad way. I mean, the only team that they beat coming out of the All-Star break is basically the Colorado Rockies. And they look like they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat right now. Their offense is so bad. And Robbie Ray, as I was just saying a minute ago, did not look very good today. He gave up 3 bombs. A lot of these hits that he was giving up came on high fastballs. And again, he does live and die by that high fastball tonight. It was a lot of dying, not a lot of living. And it came off of that first home run by Daz Cameron. The second one came off the bat of Butler, who's been having a nice season. This is one of the few guys on the A's who I actually do kind of know. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything there is to know about Lawrence Butler, but he's a nice player. Their leadoff batter, batting about 250, OPS over 800. Not a terrible player. Had a couple hits tonight and an RBI, obviously, on that home run. So you gave up a bomb to that guy. And then in the fifth inning, gave up a 2-run bomb to Brett Rooker. Rooker's 26th of the season. He, obviously, we know who he is. He's one of the only players of note on this A's team. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised that that Rooker didn't get traded by this A's team at the deadline. This is the perfect candidate for a trade for the A's. I mean, an internally grown guy who all of a sudden starts playing way above what everyone expected him to do. That's the number one candidate for the A's to ship out as soon as they possibly can, because this team hates holding on to talent, obviously, with the way that they're run lately. As I said, his 26th of the season. And also, we should note for Butler, that was his 10th home run of the month. So dude is also super hot right now. These two just hurt the Giants tonight. And honestly, the Giants offense was so bad that it didn't, that was enough right there just to beat the Giants. And I mean, 2 solo bombs and a 2-run shot would have very easily beat the Giants. Even just 3 solo bombs or the 2-run shot and a solo bomb. I mean, this Giants offense, they were able to scratch across a couple late runs, but they just looked so bad tonight, man. The A's also added on another run with Belday home run in the 8th inning. Their 4th of the night, gave the A's a 5-0 lead. The Giants added a couple runs to their scoreless total. In the bottom of the 8th, they added 1 run with leadoff double, and they almost didn't get this run. Luciano hit one in the gap. Nice drive into the gap by Luciano, but Mike Yastrzemski strikes out in the very next at bat, and it looks like the Giants are going to strand this runner in scoring position, not able to get him home. But thankfully, the Giants were gifted a wild pitch that allowed Luciano to get the third. Productive ground ball out from Hill, then scores Luciano. Otherwise, he doesn't score that inning if they don't get that wild pitch. In the bottom of the ninth, the Giants were able to scratch across another run after Pat Bailey had an RBI single out into the outfield, but it didn't really make much of a difference. It scored Michael Conforto on the play. It just didn't make much of a difference. Excuse me. That was Matt Chapman who scored on the play. Conforto had gotten on base just before Chapman and was thrown out in the fielder's choice at second base. Not a very good outing for the Giants. A lot of not great stuff today, and you can't judge the whole season based on one game, obviously, but to have this game on this day and for the Giants to play the way they played, coming off the heels of the comments Farhan had, I'm not sure if you guys saw those or heard those coming out of the answering the questions coming out of the trade deadline, but for him to say what he said and for the Giants to play how they did was a bad look. For Farhan to sit there and say the Giants have the best pitching staff in baseball, go out there and give up 5 runs, not a good look. It's going to be tough sledding going forward. The Giants, obviously, at the trade deadline, if you guys haven't heard, they got rid of Jorge Soler. They basically a salary dump for him. They traded him back to the Atlanta Braves along with Luke Jackson. And they got back a prospect who's like the 19th ranked, like 17th, 19th. I've seen both, but a guy who's ranked in the middle of the pack of the top 30 of the Braves farm system. And the Braves don't have one of the better farm systems in baseball. It's one of the worst, actually. But it's a prospect for a guy who was all season long for the Giants. It's a lateral move, man. It doesn't really do much for me. Soler was, when he was hot, he was great. And when he was cold, he was absolutely atrocious. So it was an experiment that ultimately didn't play out. It was a guy who had a 30 home run potential for the Giants that just never got it going here. He did have a little bit of a streak going. He was starting to heat up just before the trade deadline, just before the Giants shipped him out. But I don't think that was nearly enough of a sample size for teams for the Giants to really be able to sell anyone on him. He goes back to a team that he won a World Series MVP with. That's probably the team that's going to give up the most for Jorge Soler. They got back as I said, that minor league guy and a pitcher that's been very mid this year. He's been okay in the past, but he's ERA up near 10. He's basically a salary dump for Jorge Soler. So the Giants, that move was basically the first move that they had today, the first big move that they had today, and I expected them to make some big moves as the day went on, and they really did absolutely nothing. This team didn't commit to a full sell, didn't commit to go buying anybody either. They stood in the middle ground and did absolutely nothing, did not make this team any better. And it's a missed opportunity. It's a giant missed opportunity, in my opinion, for Farhan Zaidi and the San Francisco Giants. We'll break all that down on the other side. Stick with us here on the Locked On Giants postcast. We're going to go through some of the comments that Farhan Zaidi had earlier today and why they just drive me absolutely insane. Thanks so much for joining us on the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll be right back. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is jam-packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and I just see the chat going insane with a lot of negative things about Farhan. And I get it, man. I get it. People are tired of seeing this team losing. This team seems like it's allergic to even getting close to 500. The Giants came into tonight 2 games under 500, and with a win, we could have been talking about how they're 1 game away again. But nope, that's even too close now for the Giants to get back up to 500. The never-ending climb continues. But I just see all this Farhan hate, just seething hate in this chat right now, and I get it. I get it, man. The guy has had a very unsuccessful first 6 years with the Giants. To be fair, he took over a roster that was depleted. By the time Bruce Bochy was leaving, the core that had won the Giants their World Series was old and on their way out, and that they didn't have a very, stacked farm system at that point in time. And anybody who was kind of worth note in that farm system was a while away from coming up. So Farhan didn't exactly have a great situation to work with when he came in here. It's not like he came in when the Giants were on top and he decimated them. He came in when the Giants were already starting to bottom out and hit into the lull after those 3 World Series, after that stretch of that 3 World Series. And it's not great. He hasn't made this team a whole heck of a lot better. He's improved the farm system somewhat. We're seeing that right now, and a lot of that wasn't even his draft picks. I hesitate to say he improved it. He did make some trades and go get some guys that ended up benefiting the Giants and things like that. But a lot of these prospects have been Sabian picks that were just held over until the Farhan regime. And I don't think you can give entire credit to one or the other. Obviously, they have to still develop once they are drafted into the team and once they're here. And Farhan is the guy who's in charge of putting these coaches in position to develop these players. So he has a hand in that too, in developing guys like Elliot Ramos, even though he did not directly draft them. However, when you look at the track record of free agency and trades specifically, it's been bad. There's no two ways about it. It's been bad. I mean, we don't need to really relive the Arson Judge thing. We don't need to really go too deep into the Correa thing either. I mean, that's not on Farhan at all. Like, if a guy doesn't pass a physical, that's not on the GM. And obviously he was not far out of the Shohei sweepstakes. That was not something that the Giants were involved in. They also missed out on Giancarlo Stanton and Bryce Harper, if you're keeping score, which I'm sure virtually all of you are. And it's been swing and a miss and swing and a miss and swing and a miss, one after the other. And Farhan at this trade deadline didn't really take any swings at all, but it just felt like he watched a strike go right down the middle. And what I mean by that is you're keeping a guy in Blake Snell that I feel should have absolutely been traded. This guy What if the Giants hold on to him? You're basically signaling to the rest of the league you're keeping this guy as a rental. He's gonna probably have a really good second half. That's what he's shown us so far. That's what he's shown us throughout his whole career. That's when he makes his money, is the second half of the season. It will not surprise me if Blake Snell pitches the rest of this season like a Cy Young Award winner, like the guy who won it last year. It would not surprise me if this guy is just absolutely lights out dominant. Do you think he's coming back to the Giants next season? Because I sure as hell don't. I think if he pitches lights out dominant like that, he and Scott Boras are going to go elsewhere and find the biggest deal that they can, which, let me tell you, is going to be a lot more guaranteed money than one last player option year with the Giants. I think if you traded him, you could have retained this talent for next year. And with the Giants, as I've said before, it is World Series or bust. That's the goal. The goal is not get to the playoffs and maybe win one series, and that might be fun. No. This organization is their goal should be win championships. Getting to the playoffs simply isn't good enough anymore. You gave us those 3 World Series wins in the 2010s. That is what this fan base expects. Not 3 in 10 years or 3 in a decade, every decade. But they expect to be in contention for the biggest free agents in the market, for the biggest trade names, for into the playoffs. I mean, making the playoffs should be like the bare minimum for this team. If this going multiple seasons without a playoff appearance, without a playoff win, is inexcusable. This team needs to get it together and figure out how to win some games. And it's not all this season on Zaidi. And I don't think this team is going to get to the playoffs. We'll see how they do, but it's going to be a tough road because a lot of other National League wildcard contenders got a lot better at the deadline and the Giants didn't. I think that looking at the rest of the league and seeing what's going on, you should know that your number one priority should be to trade this guy who's basically a rental and to guarantee that you will have talent going forward on this team. The Giants didn't do that at all. They also didn't go out and get a big bat either. They didn't sell and they didn't buy. They didn't really unload any of their prospects. Oh, they got Mark Canha, which is just why in the hell they have like 7 or 8 guys on this team who can play the outfield, and yet you go and trade for a 35-year-old outfielder. That makes absolutely no sense to me. 0 sense. I get that Canha is supposedly a great locker room guy and he fits well with the vibe of San Francisco and all that. And he played with Bob Melvin back in Oakland. I understand all these things. It still does not make sense to me why the Giants are adding yet another outfielder that's mid. I mean, you already have a bunch of guys named like Mark Canha on the team. Their names are Mike Yastrzemski and Michael Conforto. They are basically the same dude. And yeah, you can probably go into their splits and see which one is better in which situation. But overall, at the end of the day, you're basically getting the same thing from these 3 guys, which is production at the plate, guys that can kind of run into one every now and again, and production in the field. Yeah, it's a little bit better in the field than the others. This just isn't enough. It's laughable. Like, I'm laughing because if I wouldn't be, I'd be crying right now. This team is so incredibly frustrating with how inconsistent they are. They needed something to make them like steady the ship offensively. In my opinion, that was the biggest need. Go out and get a bat. And Farhan, to his credit, did say the offer wasn't there for Snell. He said there wasn't a franchise-altering type move available for them to make. And I get it, but when I look around the league and see what other teams gave up, like the Baltimore Orioles, what they gave up for a back end of the rotation pitcher in Rogers from Miami, I feel like they absolutely would have given up more for a Blake Snell. Are you kidding me? So I have a hard time hearing that and not thinking what could have been. I get that the Blue Jays also didn't unload Vlad Guerrero Jr. or Bo Bichette, which were 2 targets that every Giants fan and really every team in baseball who could have even been like potentially buying a first baseman or a shortstop. Those were the 2 most talked about names of all of trade targets potentially for this trade deadline. And both of them end up staying put in Toronto. So I get it. Maybe there just wasn't the right trade to be made. And that's fine. But I'm getting real tired of hearing that excuse because we have heard this time and time and time again. And then Farhan basically goes dumpster diving and comes back with guys like AJ Pollock. It's becoming incredibly frustrating watching this happen over and over and over again. And then to hear the comments that Farhan made. He said a lot of things in interviews today. He talked about how he felt that this pitching rotation was the best in all of baseball. He really, really, like, that was his message, is he believes that the Giants pitching staff is the best in all of baseball and that they will make the playoffs. That he fully anticipates that this team will make the playoffs. He talked about why they didn't add a bat. He talked about why they didn't trade Blake Snell. He talked about how what was a big priority, what he wanted to see from the Giants going into this trade deadline before deciding if they were going to buy or sell. He talked about the young guys and how that's got to be what they lean on going forward. We got to talk about all of these different comments because I got a whole lot to say about it, especially in the context of what we saw tonight against the A's and how bad this team was. We're going to take a quick break here on the Locked On Giants postcast. On the other side, we got to get into this Farhan stuff. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and we'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stat projections on Tuesdays. You know we love those Taco Tuesdays, to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. It's PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Welcome back to the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, and today the Giants fall to the A's 5-2, and it comes on the heels of the Giants doing absolutely nothing at the trade deadline. So the pulse of the Giants fan base right now is probably somewhere around 180, and everyone's screaming because this is just more of the same from this front office, which I feel like I'm a pretty moderate, middle of the road guy when it comes to this. I don't think that I don't, up until this season, up until really now, like, this is starting to signal, when you're looking at the whole picture, you have to tell it how it is. And I feel like Farhan is officially falling more onto the failure side of things. I mean, I thought this last offseason, he did a decent job. He went out and signed the best guys available that he could get. You couldn't get Shohei. I get it. That's what the Giants should be in on. That's the level of free agent that you should be getting. Instead, they go get Jung-Hoo Lee. They get Jordan Hicks. They get Jorge Soler. They get Matt Chapman, and they get Blake Snell. That's a pretty solid haul. You have some reclamation projects, but you have some guys that you thought were going to be guaranteed contributors. The three, obviously, Soler, Chapman, and Snell, have underperformed in a big way. Matt Chapman's been okay. He's been really solid on defense, minus what you saw tonight. And he kind of booted that ground ball. It was ruled a hit. It was a tough play to make. But this is who the Giants have been this year. It's a group of underperforming players, but that's not on the GM. He went out and signed last year's reigning NL Cy Young champion. I don't think there was a single team in baseball that would have said, nah, we don't want Blake Snell next year. He's going to be bad the first half. I think virtually every team in baseball probably wanted Blake Snell on their roster. You can't fault the guy for going out and signing players if the players underperform. If these are proven players that don't live up to it, that's not on Farhan. But the thing is, this is kind of the only haul that he's gotten. The other guys that he have signed this was the biggest impact free agent class that he's had, and they all fell short. Their contracts aren't up yet, and you still got a long way on some of these. But Soler being shipped out, I still think Jung-Hoo Lee is an A+, like that home run grand slam signing. It sucks that he got hurt this year. We'll see what he can do next year, and I'm fully confident that he'll be great. He'll be great for this Giants team, and I'm very excited to see him play. I even picked up the bobblehead the other day, man. We got to get this guy back on the field as soon as he's ready next season, and that'll be great. But it's been frustrating hearing Farhan talk about the reasoning behind all these things. He says that they were not wanting to sell Blake Snell because he was so confident in this Giants pitching staff that he thinks that this is a playoff team. It's going to be a very tough battle to make it there. It's not completely out of the question. I don't think they'll make it. I really don't. At this point, I think you have too much ground to make up. I think this offense is way too inconsistent. And I think that you are chasing a lot of other teams that just got a lot better at the deadline. It makes this uphill climb even harder. Farhan was asked that same kind of, in that same line of thinking, he was asked, why didn't you add a bat? And this answer frustrated me more than anything else I saw in this press conference. He did his nervous little chuckle, and I get it. Like, I have a little nervous chuckle too. I'm not going to kill the guy for his ill-timed laughter, because I suffer from the same issue, I guess. But he did his weird little chuckle. It is kind of a weird little chuckle. I gotta say, it's kind of weird. And he said that having the bat, when he was asked directly why you didn't add a bat at the trade deadline, he said something to the effect of, having the best pitching staff in the world and the best lineup in the world would be something to aspire to, I guess, and chuckled. He was implying that this Giants offense was just one bat away from being the best offense in baseball. And I can't think of an answer to a question that just makes me want to jump off of a rooftop more than that. I mean, what are you watching to make you think that this is a competitive offense in Major League Baseball? This team almost just got blanked. If it wasn't for that one run they scratched across in the 9th inning and that gift of a wild pitch that they got in the inning prior, they would have been shut out for just the second time at home all season long. This team has been so bad lately, and I don't, except for that series against the Rockies, which brings me to my next point. Farhan openly said that he really wanted to see how the Giants played this past weekend to determine if they were going to be buyers or sellers. And obviously, it wasn't just that weekend. It was all the stuff that led up to it too. But how in the hell is a series against the Colorado Rockies, a team that is like 30 games under 500, how is that the series you base your success off of? It is just asinine to me why somebody would believe that. Like, that is insane. I mean, this is it's like, okay, well, I'll go box a 10-year-old and then let you know how it turns out, and then we can adjust what I need to do for my boxing career after. What the hell? No. Obviously, you're gonna beat up on the little guy. Like, what? I don't know how you're gonna sit there and take what you learned, if anything, air quotes, learned from that Rockies series and apply it to the rest of the season. Why don't you take the rest of the season and apply it to the second half of the season? I feel like I'm living in crazy town. I'm so upset that this team did not trade Blake Snell. I'm so even more upset that this team didn't make any effort to go out and get a bat to make this lineup better. If you say you're going in for the playoffs and that you think this is a playoff team, well, then go get a bat to improve this offense and make this team better. I don't understand why this is so incredibly difficult. I also think it's hilarious at the same time that this Giants fan base is just so incredibly, like, I mean, just on surface level, like I put out a tweet earlier today that said Giants fans want, something to the effect of like, Giants fans wanted Jorge Soler gone all season long and ripped Farhan for signing him in the first half of the season. And then when Farhan trades him, everyone's mad at Farhan for trading him. And I do feel like it is a little bit of that. Like, this guy can't win no matter what he does with a large portion of this fan base. All I really wanted from this trade deadline was a commitment to one or the other. Sell, get better next year, or get better now and make the damn playoffs. If that's your goal, is to save your own behind and make the playoffs and make it look like you had a successful season because you don't want to lose your job. We're obviously talking about Farhan in the offseason. Then fine, I can understand that, but at least commit to it. Get me a playoff berth. Go win a playoff series. Imagine how the tune of Giants fans would change if they went and won a playoff series this year and look to be competitive next season. And also, if you go win a playoff series and you're signaling to baseball, we're competing again, maybe that helps you get some free agents next year. There's a lot of things the Giants could have done today to make, it would have been one game, but there were some things that they could have done today in this game to make the fan base feel a little better. But to say that you have the best pitching staff in baseball and then watch Robbie Ray go out there and just get absolutely obliterated, to watch the Giants give up 4 home runs today, and then to hear Farhan talk about how the offense is, not bad, but not the best offense in baseball either, and then go out and collect a total of 5 hits. It's very uninspiring. It's very frustrating, and it feels like he thinks he's just smarter than everybody in the fan base, and that, I think, is the part that is aggravating. This guy has not built up very much goodwill towards the fan base, and I think that some of the way that he, I don't know, just is, his vibe, his aura, if you will, is just not very, I don't know, likable. He's not a guy that you just want to embrace and say, that's my guy. I don't know that anyone's ever wanted to do that with Farhan. And this has just been kind of how his tenure has gone with the Giants. It's been hard to digest. It's been a lot of numbers and weird ticky-tack moves where, he said a few years ago that his philosophy was no move too small. Well, maybe we need to focus on landing some of those big moves instead of spending so much time focusing on no move too small. This trade deadline was a failure. Farhan, if he wasn't on the hot seat before, which he obviously was, but I mean, it should be scalding at this point, boiling under his butt. I mean, if the Giants don't make the playoffs and this guy holds on to Blake Snell and he leaves in the offseason, I think people are gonna be out for blood, man. It'll be a rough time to be in the Giants front office if that's what happens this season. Again, we got a little bit away from it today. The Giants lose 5-2 to the Oakland Athletics, but let's be honest, this game was pretty boring. The Giants were out of it from what felt like the jump, and there was a lot bigger deals of things happening today as far as the trade deadline, where we go for the rest of this season with the Giants, and what it, what it looks like and how the fan base feels. This is frustrating. I'm getting really tired of watching this team go out and be so inconsistent every night, and I'm getting real tired of the front office feeding us a bunch of BS. I really am. That's all the time we got for you guys today on the Locked On Giants Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you tomorrow as we come to you live following the very last Battle of the Bay. We will we'll come to you live, and I hope the Giants split this. I think it's swept in the very last Battle of the Bay. I'm never going to hear the end of it from my girlfriend, who is a A's fan. Very, very dark secret. I don't let too many people in on, but yeah, she's out there rooting for the A's. Unfortunately, we got to keep. I'm working to bring her over to the Giants. Trust me. Maybe once the A's go ahead and break everyone's heart out there in Oakland and move on to Vegas, maybe then she'll come over to the good side. But who knows? Who knows? Until tomorrow, thanks for joining us on the Locked On Giants Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you next time. Peace.